General Weygand has called the Battle of France is over. The Battle of Britain is about to begin.
Welcome to the Lead Pursuit Podcast, a podcast covering Blood Red Skies, a game of World War II aerial combat. Good evening and welcome to episode 16. Tonight's a bit of a grab bag. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the new kit that we've seen out there, some of the pre-orders that are available on a variety of websites. We'll, of course, talk a little bit more about Airstrike, and as we're digging through the information that the Warlord team has given us, Brett and I are going to talk through some of this and let you know what we've seen, what we think may still be missing, or some of the questions you may still have. Hey, Brett, good to talk to you again.
Hey, brother, how are you?
Doing good. So I know we've been spending a lot of time with our real jobs, but when we're not earning a paycheck that actually puts food on the table, I know I've been trying to dig through the Airstrike rules and catch up on some things that I missed and take a look at this sample information that we've been given, which we know isn't quite what we're going to see in the final version. But if you had a chance to look at a few more things and maybe come up with some more questions.
No, I was listening to our last podcast where we came back and talked a bit about some of the things that were left unanswered until we got a little more information. And it didn't prompt any new questions for me, but I was just thinking again about how much I can't wait to get my hands on it because it looks like it's going to be pretty fun. I'm kind of interested to see how the target cards are going to work, what they're going to look like, and how we're going to, actually use those in the game. I like your ideas about the target markers too, and how maybe we can come up with some cool things there.
Absolutely. It's going to be really interesting to see how the game changes and how the way people play Blood Red Skies changes with the addition of some of the Airstrike elements. Let's talk about a couple of the cool things that are out there. A few of the retailers have started putting the Airstrike rule set out there on a pre-order, which is awesome. So if you are wanting to go ahead and throw your hat in the ring, I know Game Castle has it out there. I haven't looked to see if Miniature Market or anyone else does, but Game Castle has a pre-order out there for $25, 60 cents US that you can pre-order. I know a couple people have already done that. So hopefully over the next couple of weeks, we're going to see a couple of these different pre-orders show up out there. And of course, we expect it real soon to show up pre-order on the Warlord website as well. Who knows which one will get to you first? To be perfectly honest, and no fanboy on either side here, I think we saw some people got their releases of the last series of MiG Alley updates. Some people got it really quick from Warlord. Some people it took longer than expected. So buyer beware is all I'll say. Buy from your favorite online retailer or from Warlord, but realize that that stuff ships in batches, and they may not have enough to satisfy all the initial pre-orders. But I know I'm going to be pre-ordering one, even though we've got some pretty good information. I'm going to want to have a fresh hard copy in my hand to really be able to use as a reference. What about you, Brett? Do you think you're going to buy one?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're pretty much suckers. In case John Russell, the pusher, hasn't already broken us down, yeah, we're probably buying a copy. So it's going to be good to get to take a look at that. We're going to skip talking about some of the new aircraft releases. We're going to wait for Chris to come back on and talk about the Russians and some of the aircraft coming out in the Warlord resin. I'm really excited to see how that's going to turn out. I know I'm kind of sitting there with bated breath waiting to see, get my hands on it. But, Chris is our resin evaluator. So Chris will let us know what he thinks of those. And we'll talk about that here in a couple of weeks or so. But there's a lot of other aircraft that are coming out. And it looks like a lot of the lines are starting to change over so that these new lines will feature Warlord resin. I'm kind of curious about some of the games like Judge Dredd, how much that's going to come out in Warlord resin versus metal. And I'm kind of afraid it might have gone to press a little bit before Warlord resin was ready. So I may find myself with some metal Judge Dredd miniatures out there later on in the year.
I'm excited about the resin models coming out. I'm working on some metal Stukas right now, and I was a little reticent to order them because, knowing that I could go somewhere else and get resin, but I thought, I'm going to give it a try. I haven't done any metal models very recently, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to flex those muscles and maybe, be in a position where I can answer questions for those who are maybe dealing with them. And I've already learned a lot just from the little bit I've done on them, because with the Warlord game Metal Stukas, you have to glue the landing gear on. And that comes with its own special challenges, but no big deal. It's certainly it's not insurmountable. I'm actually very satisfied with.
Oh, you're so much happier about it now than you were when you were working your way through it. Those were not your words as you were fighting through getting the landing gear on.
A little bit of trial and error. I had, first attempts were not very successful. I had to come back at it again in another approach. So we're getting there.
Okay, good to hear that. Well, there's a lot of other things that are out there that we've kind of taken a survey of. Normally what we'll do is we'll kind of give you our opinions on what's out there. Some of these topics, there's 1,000 different options. These are just the brands or the individual companies that we've tried. Some of them are very specific. So we'll talk about some very specific paints here that we've been experimenting with. But there's also a lot of acrylic add-ons, card sleeve add-ons, magnet add-ons for if you want to change how your Advantage state bases work. But I think the ones that I just got in my hands today that I was actually surprised showed up before I was getting ready to leave on my trip were a bunch of the ruler kits from Just Lasered. And I know I sent you a couple photos of those, Brett. Hopefully that at least excited you to get something new.
Yeah, those look nice. They look like the shape of them looks like you'd be able to wiggle them in between crowds of aircraft without too much trouble.
Yeah, that's the thing. For those of us with fat fingers, and then we tried the using a measuring tape for a while, and that kept sticking to our magnets. So I think these will be a pleasant change. Ordered a bunch of those in a couple different colors, and haven't played with them yet. They look really nice. They seem really sturdy, and we'll see how well they work out. But I also got a bunch of their starter kit foam, pre-cut foam, and it looks great. So
man, that stuff looks so choice. I've been seeing folks post up on Ready Room their sets they've gotten from them. I didn't realize it was from the same outfit, but those look so nice.
It is, and I will be honest. So for the price that it cost to get it shipped over here, it was far more cost effective than stuff from Battle Foam. Now, I swear by Battle Foam's cases. I love those guys. It fits the cases I have, and this was specifically designed just to fit the boxed set, and it doesn't totally fit it perfectly. The box top pops up just a little bit, but either way, it's a way to put all your bases, a bunch of aircraft, and the guys out there at Just Lasered were awesome because they customized it. So one of them has ME-109s and Mustangs in it. Another one has Spitfires and Zeros in it. So they did whatever I wanted, and it didn't dramatically increase the price of it. So. I think I'm going to probably try a couple of their other ones that they have that fit into, preformed plastic boxes, and maybe that's my new miniatures carrying cases.
Okay, yeah. So I was going to ask you. So they're not designed necessarily to fit into a certain case that's out there on the market. You just
no, they're not. So they're designed to fit certain kinds of plastic hard cases is how I'll refer to them, and they're fairly standard sizes that are available both in the UK and in the US.
Okay,
so
that'll work.
I just have to go back and take a look at which ones I have to fit the foam they have designed out, and just talk to them about how I can make those work. And to be honest, the prices were great, the shipping was great, it was fast for being just ground shipping from the UK. So I was really happy with it overall.
Tell me more about those measuring things. You sent me a picture, and besides being, I guess, color coded for your faction, it looked like they had an unusual shape. So maybe you could measure from the side of the Advantage bases instead of from the front. Or
so there's a marker on the first one that says base, and so that helps you realize that's what you put up against the base, and then they have the full distance template on the side. Once again, for jets, nobody's making 13 and 14 inch variants of these because that's kind of a niche market. But the fact is, this would work for 90% of the stuff you're going to do. And if you're going to fly jets, well, you just move them twice. But they look really nice. So I'm excited to try them.
Cool.
Some of the other things we tried, I know we talked about different aircraft cards and sleeves as we've started to put some wear and tear on our Blood Red Skies gear. I was kind of lazy. I went straight out to Amazon and looked up a couple different types of cards. For the aircraft card, I came across two different really nice ones out there. One's from Pro Support and Titan Shield. And what I'll tell you is The Titan Shield cards are the ones I'm going to use, simply because they have a matte backing on one side. So it's glossy on one, matte on the other, and it allowed me to kind of have some tactile feel to it, so the cards don't all kind of slide together. But you know, at the end of the day, it's $10 for about 150 of them, or about $5 for the Pro Support cards for 200. So it's, what do you need? You just need something to hold your cards. I don't know. You guys, you and Chris are both using baseball card holders, right?
I got some BCW top load card holders, and they're for my aircraft cards, and they're rigid. I kind of like the fact that they're kind of stiff. They're still clear plastic and all that, but they have some rigidity to them. So I think it'll make them, you know, the cards aren't likely to bend and stuff when I throw them in my box of stuff.
Right. Yeah, the only reason I don't like those is they just don't fit the small box that I have all my aircraft cards in. They're just slightly too large in one of the dimensions, so that's all right.
Yeah, they do have a little bit of a margin around the card itself, but I just toss mine in my starter box in a drawer in my playroom, my game room. I was hoping I could find some rigid cards like that for the aircraft trait cards and doctrine cards and so forth, but I wasn't able to find anything that matched the rigid larger cards, the 3x4 cards. But I did, you know, just find some clear European style game cards. I don't remember what brand they were, but there's so many to choose from. I think they're typically called European board game style cards, and
that's correct.
You get a huge pack of them, and they're perfect for protecting, you know, your stack of aircraft trait cards, ace cards, any of those other smaller cards that you have in your action deck.
Yeah, that was kind of the funny part, is I'm going to spend more money on those by the time I'm done, because I bought kind of some of the nicer ones from Fantasy Flight that are about 50 or 100 of them for $9. So after a while, I'm gonna burn through a bunch of those with all the trait cards and ace cards, etc.
Right.
So it's all right. Okay, well, let's talk about some of the other cool add-ons we've seen. We talked a little bit about the MiG Alley mat. Now, have you got your MiG Alley mat from Deep Cut Studios yet?
I have not ordered a mat. I am holding off on some purchases. I'm trying to defer some major purchases till I get some of this stuff that I have on the hobby table done, so that I can make one big purchase. And I think among those things are going to be the mats for Korea and for Malta.
Okay,
but I do like that mat,
because I know Chris has picked up the MiG Alley mat, and he was pretty impressed with it. So we'll talk to him next week and get his feelings about that.
That's cool. I didn't know he got it already.
Yeah. He was impressed with, once again, how quickly everything shipped and how easy it was to put it in order and get exactly what you wanted. So I know you had a couple paints you wanted to talk about. You said the Hataka line, you really want to talk about their blue line and their orange line. What's the difference between the two?
Well, let me back up a little bit. I was using the Airwarp series paints from Vallejo. Those, they have those whole box sets for different eras and different air forces, and they're great. I love the colors, but I was brush painting with them, and I just found it tedious. It's not that it can't be done, but it was a little cumbersome, getting multiple layers on just to get especially for splinter pattern camo on my Luftwaffe planes. I was just doing it over and over and over again to get those colors built up. So I thought, there's probably, let me try some other things out there. And I came across the Hataka line. They have the blue line and the orange line. There are two separate lines for, the blue line is formulated specifically for brush work. The orange line is their airbrush line. So, the orange line is pretty thin for airbrush, much like the Vallejo box sets. They're pretty thin because I think they're primarily
for their model
airbrush.
Air that's designed for the airbrush versus just the model color designed for brushing on.
That's right. And so I grabbed several of the colors I wanted from my early war Luftwaffe stuff from Hataka, and I liked them. I did I did a batch of BF-109s for Malta, and I did a couple of what did I do? I did a couple of AT-111s with the Hataka line, and I really liked them. I actually airbrushed the base coats with and with another line, I guess, and then all my brushwork on top of the lighter colors, I use the Hataka stuff, and it was nice. They come in little dropper bottles, pretty typical, like your Vallejo Air bottles, very similar look, but it's just formulated for brushwork, so it's not super thin. So a couple of coats, couple of thin coats get you right where you need to be. I did notice a little variance from brand to brand. Let's say maybe RLM 71 dark green between Vallejo and between Hataka, you'll see some little differences. Not that I think it really matters that much. I don't even think you could notice, especially if you do an entire squadron in the same tone and they're not mixed around. I don't think you would notice at all, but I did notice there was a slight difference in the colors, even though they, the number and the title on the bottle is the same from brand to brand. It's still a little variation from brand to brand, but I was pretty happy with just how it applied with the brush. So if you're out there looking for something to use with a brush for these models, I mean, I could recommend the Hataka Blue line as being, really worthwhile. And what's kind of neat is besides the individual paint colors, you can buy whole sets, just like the Vallejo Air War sets. Hataka also has box sets for different air forces and different time frames. In fact, I was looking on their website. They very recently released a new orange line set for Africa for the Luftwaffe. That's a new line. I personally use the early war Luftwaffe set from them, and I use the blue line, but they're always coming out with new stuff, I guess. It's kind of amazing. I first found out about them almost by accident as I was looking for colors to do my dust models in. Right. And I stumbled across some color panels that came from them and found box sets. And I mean, they have stuff for all kinds of air forces right up to the modern era, whole box sets for them. So pretty cool.
Yeah, I've heard of their stuff. I've just never used it. So I may have to go check that out. Not that I need any more paints, but
I also grabbed some Ammo by MiG acrylic color.
Yeah, you said that was different in the way that it was bottled than what you're used to.
Yeah, I've used Ammo by MiG for a lot of their weathering stuff and panel line stuff, but that's all. That's not acrylic. That's all. A little more toxic, but they make acrylic paint lines as well, including color sets for different air forces and different eras. And I just grabbed a single color. I grabbed their RLM 71, the dark green, just to try it out. And I was really pretty impressed. It's on the bottle, it says it's for brush and airbrush. So, maybe it's a little thinner than the Hataka Blue line, but the bottles are nice, little dropper bottles. It comes with with an agitator right in the bottle. So pretty convenient. And I liked it. I've already used the MiG color brushed on and I thought it worked out pretty good. I think if I was using an airbrush, I'd thin it a little bit, but it's really useful. I think I'll probably pick up some of their colors, especially as we get into like some late war hobbying. I'll probably pick up one of their color sets for that.
Yeah. Well, that kind of leads us into those who have been sitting on the Blood Red Skies Ready Room may have seen some of your North Africa paint schemes and Malta paint schemes start dropping out there. Tell me about these HE-111s and the BF-110s that you've been working on.
Well, I have a habit of trying to build for a campaign, if you will. Like, I'll paint the aircraft to match whatever campaign we are, building up for. And since we're working on a Malta campaign to really showcase airstrike, I thought, well, let me get into this. So as I start researching stuff, I find all this stuff
to buy and paint more airplanes.
That's right. I've already got plenty of 109s, but why not make more? Because I can't.
We always need more.
That's right. I can't bring myself to put, early war or Battle of Britain 109s in Malta.
I have certainly no problem with that. Zero. Call me lazy.
Yeah, that's me. That's the OCD kicking in. But another thing I kind of tend to like to do is, especially if there's an ace in the unit, is I'll read up about the unit, find out kind of who was there and when. If there's any notable aircraft in that period, I try to model them up. So you'll see, if you really look hard in my squadrons, you'll see some kind of standouts. And it's because, not always, good example, my 110s that I did for Malta, one of the prominent units there, at least early in the campaign, they really kind of look, most of the aircraft in Malta for the Luftwaffe really look like they just came from France, because guess what? They did. So they have the same paint schemes. Yeah. But they hung around for a while, or maybe moved over to Libya and stuff, and adopted, more desert-like color schemes. So I took a little liberty. I did paint some 110s in a scheme that really reflects kind of how they looked in 42 when they were flying out of Libya instead of out of Sicily. And then some of the noteworthy aces that were in that unit, I painted specifically, but they did, the aircraft, really just so I could stand them apart from the rest of the squadron. One of them I painted up. It's got the markings he had for when they flew in Yugoslavia, and another one for an aircraft that flew out of Libya. But they stand apart visually from the rest of the, basic aircraft, I guess, if you want to call them that.
Right.
But I still got some work to do. For the 110 specifically, I'll have a mix for it, just because it's a fun thing for me. It's like I want to paint them. I've got some that have that sort of maybe recognizable desert sort of pattern, if you will, that tropical look to them. But then I'm going to do a couple that look like they did making that transition from France into the Mediterranean. Oh, cool. And it's kind of neat. As I see how the colors change, I'm kind of intrigued by the color patterns and choices that they use. I found some color panels for some 110s that almost have like that night fighter look, sort of the grays and the blues and stuff that you don't see necessarily in Western Europe, and you don't see really anywhere else in the Mediterranean. But they only lasted for a short period. But I'm going to do a couple like that too.
That'll be neat. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you have the time to devote to that. I'm lucky to just be able to get my new terrain in for Airstrike and at least lay it on the table. I haven't even had much of a chance to assemble it or to prime it. That was going to be my goal before leaving town. But I think I'll probably have to wait till I get back from my business trip to get around to fool with that. But I'll tell you, that Pico Armor terrain, I got a chance to really look at it in detail today. I know I sent you and Chris some photos, but it's cool to just have, British hangars, British Quonset huts, little admin buildings and things like that you can now throw on the board to represent those ground targets in Blood Red Skies.
Those look really cool. And I'm hoping we can find something similar in scale that represents maybe some of the surface targets, like some ships. I'd really love to get an aircraft carrier, maybe some submarines.
Yeah, so I noticed that a couple people on the Ready Room had done a couple different ships. I know one of the guys brought out one of the 1 to 1800 scale ships, so it was extremely small, but it made it real easy for the aircraft to all maneuver around and not have a problem running into each other trying to get in the target area. One correction from what I briefed with all the pico scale armor, because they're 2 millimeter scale buildings. I know we said they were 1 to 1200. They say that they're actually 1 to 900. So bad on me for that one. Little did I know I wasn't able to do basic math. But there's still a lot of options out there. I know I looked at some 1 285th, 1 300 scale stuff, and it still was just not quite right, I guess is the best way I can describe it.
Too big, right?
What's that?
It's just too big.
Yeah,
right?
It was too big. Some of the things looked fine, like some of the fuel tanks and stuff looked okay. But when you got to the hangars, now all of a sudden they were, about an inch and a half. It wasn't really what you wanted for being able to put a number of buildings out there and not clobber the map with it.
That Pico armor stuff, are you finding rolling stock like tanks and trucks and stuff that you can make convoys with?
Oh yeah, so I've already picked up some trains. I think, and I saw 2 millimeter vehicles somewhere. Not from Pico Armor itself when it came to armored vehicles. I think they have them in like 1 1/600th in the 3mm scale. But there are some small scale vehicles out there. Let me actually look while we're talking about it. I'm pretty sure Pico Armor's smallest scale vehicle is the 3mm ones. Because this 2mm stuff is just tiny, but
that'd be really small for rolling stock, I would guess. I mean, a big bridge or something, no problem.
Yeah, they've got, and I was just looking at modern miniatures, but you go to, if you go to their World War II section, they have a number of 3mm tanks and trucks and things like that. But to be honest, I mean, these things are tiny. So I will probably, if I buy a couple of them, I'll just glue them to a piece of acrylic like we talked about and
make a convoy, right?
Yeah, make my own convoy out there. And if you want to be really, really nerdy and detailed about it, maybe you'll buy some flak wagons and you can metal or you can magnetize those in there. The only reason I would not opt for their flak guns is, holy crap, are they tiny? So, so here's a compromise. You look at the Litco ones, the Litco acrylic flak indicators. Their flak cannon indicators are about 1 centimeter to 1.5 centimeters big. Looking at some of these cannons, holy crap, are they tiny? So I was just looking at like a 3.7 centimeter light flak cannon. I have no idea how tiny this thing is. Let's see if it tells me. Nope, it doesn't tell me. I mean, it's 15 of them for $4.25. So that should give you an idea.
Yeah. Well, you were asking if I had any thoughts since our last discussion on it, and after reading more on it, that is something I thought of. We were talking about target markers and all that, and maybe how you work out the flak, whether you have, target marker that represents flak that you take on and off, take off the target as it takes damage, point hits or whatever. Maybe working that like with chits, like the boom chits, just in reverse might be a more practical way to do that. Cause if those things are so tiny, just have cool targets that you have chits on, and you remove the chits as they take point hits. Much the way we add chits.
Some of those. I think they've got flat cannon chits rather than the little blocks. But yeah, you're right. Just something as easy and simple as that. So it's like the boom chip mechanic. You can just pull them off as they get destroyed.
There's a lot of stuff out there. I was surprised. You've really found a lot. And you say you don't have a lot of time, but you must be spending some time digging around on the internet in this rabbit hole, because you were showing me some stuff just on Litco, all the stuff they have. And it must be a lot of games that have similar mechanics.
Sitting at the bar waiting for my beer to be delivered and having to have something to do when I'm on travel. Me and my buddy sitting there looking at each other, not wanting to talk about work. So that's when I have time to search.
Well, it's funny because Airstrike hasn't even dropped, and yet there's things out there that certainly could apply. I mean, might have some relevance. We're talking about these chits and markers and stuff. A lot of that stuff might port right over.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that will, to be honest. And once again, it's really up to your creativity. I mean, it's whatever people want to do in the game, how complex they want to make it. If you want to make it real simple and just put a colored marker out there, then hey, that's fine too. Nobody's going to judge you for not having Pico Armor scale targets out there. But by the same token, it looks like, at least for the naval side, some people have already gone to some pretty cool links to put 1/1200th, 1/1600th scale ships out there. Which, oh my God, that's got to be a pain to paint.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I think. I think it'd be cool to have something different to represent, barrages and stuff, and just because it'll stand apart from the boom chits and stuff. And you were talking about splash markers for those special mechanics. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, there's so many cool things you can do. How much time and how much effort do you want to put to acquiring stuff rather than playing? I probably need to spend more time playing rather than looking on the internet. But since I'm not carrying an air army with me everywhere I go on travel, I haven't been able to do that.
What's that? You had a term. You said something about. I don't know what it was. It was funny.
I'm not going to volunteer any of my information on terms that I use to describe those of us that would buy
nerd or
stuff.
something. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, we just won't use any of those terms. I'll just keep those terms to myself. For those of us with acrylic addiction, we'll leave it at that. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about Airstrike itself. There's some really interesting discussions that have been online as the rules get closer and as people get more and more previews of what might be in the rules. And it's really funny to watch people jump to conclusions or, as we've talked about a number of times, some gamers, we're not content with just taking the rules as is. As soon as a game designer leaves out our favorite weapon system, our favorite airplane, our favorite ace, we immediately are home ruling things, creating ways to do those kind of things. But there still have been a couple questions that I think I want to kind of reconfirm that haven't been answered. And there's some things that have been revised that I think are neat changes. I know we've spent a lot of time talking about bombers and multi-engine fighters, and we really alluded to this and talked about it in passing. But at least in this version of Airstrike that I've seen, they do a great job and come out and say, you know what, multi-engine fighters, if you want, just treat them as single engine with 2 boom chits. And suddenly that opens a whole series of cool new things you can do. I think we may have to try that because I know my experience flying the multi-engine fighters, it just didn't feel right. I don't know. How would you describe it, Brad? It was a little strange.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just expecting too much out of the BF-110, but it was a little disappointing. Certainly, I could see how your Mossies you would want to have probably Absolutely. Do a little more.
Well, and I think it's worded best, at least the way we saw it, where it's, anything with agile, just treat it like it's a single engine fighter, and it gets single engine fighter with 2 boom chits. So you don't get shot down the first time you fail to dodge. You acquire 2 boom chits and then you're shot down. And it really gives you the ability to still climb when you're damaged. So you can still climb for advantage. There's a lot, you don't have to worry about being able to be shot regardless of your advantage level and your opponent. So you can be a single engine fighter or multi-engine fighter playing as a single engine. And now there is used to being advantaged because no one else can shoot you while you're advantaged. So there's a lot of really interesting trait play out if you do that. So I think it's something we may have to take a look at. I
want to try that out and see how it feels.
I think specifically for things like the P-38 aircraft that really filled a fighter role, not necessarily just a ground attack with a secondary fighter role. I think that will be good. But that kind of leads us into some of this question of aircraft traits, because looking through the sample rules that I saw, I couldn't find anything to answer our question about does heavy hitter have to apply in air to ground, and does buzzsaw have to apply? And I kind of remain unconvinced that those aircraft that were given heavy hitter necessarily should have it for air to ground. What I will say is some of them absolutely should. When you look at some of the ground attack, the Typhoon, the Tempest, some of those that are given heavy hitter, they really need to have an equivalent in the air to ground section. But a really good discussion came up from Jonathan Dale on the radio room. Did you see that whole discussion on ground attack cannons?
Yes, I did see briefly. You're probably more well read in on it than I am, but I did see that there was some discussion going on about that.
Yes, so I participated in the discussion a little bit. I had to go back and really reread everyone's post today, getting ready to talk about it. And while I do agree with Ken Nat's post at the end, hey guys, how about we all wait for the final version of the rules to drop? Sure, I think that's a valid thing. Let's see how it plays out. But I think Jonathan brought up some of the issues that we all kind of feel with strafing and with strafing ordnance, and how maybe this is one of those points where we've too narrowed the field to fit it into a small 3 firepower world with some bonuses. And I will oversimplify. My apologies, Jonathan. I will oversimplify what he was saying and say that maybe a trait needs to be added for aircraft with air to ground cannons that were
a ground attack trait or something.
Specifically for the cannons that were geared towards air to ground use. And the reason he brings it up is because there's always an effectiveness argument. So aviators being what they are, and I say that as being someone who wore wings for many years of my career, there's always a misrepresentation of the firepower of cannons, that they really are not as effective in an air-to-ground role as people would like to believe they are. even the A-10's cannon. There's a lot of things where aircrew think they have destroyed a target, and they may have done a little bit of damage, or they may have influenced the enemy to leave the area. As there's even some comment in some of the after actions from World War II that the purpose of shooting rockets and firing some of these larger caliber cannons wasn't necessarily to destroy the target, but was to scare the enemy off so that they would all abandon their vehicles. So I go, that seems like a lot of money to spend for psychological value. But his comment was have a trait like Cannon Bird, or whatever you want to call it. It's a positive trait that allows you to specifically negate hardened and armored. And so the reason he says that is because he feels strafing is overpowered right now, and that hardened and armored block strafing too much. I don't know. I need to play more games. What I will say is I think there's probably a smart way to do this and to add it in. And if you add air-to-ground cannons, you have to recognize that some of them were designed to be tank busters and some of them weren't. So he talks about, well, maybe at some point we add the trait ordnance, which is the air-to-ground equivalent of heavy hitter. Because just because you had a big cannon doesn't mean it was employed as a tank buster. And I'll use the discussion about the PBJ, an aircraft, near and dear to my heart as a U.S. Marine. Yeah, it had a 75 millimeter cannon, but as far as I know from my history, they never used armor-piercing shells. It was for shooting up beach emplacements, shooting up river boats, small light transports. It was not designed to go out tank hunting with.
After point targets.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas you look at some of the other aircraft, especially the Stuka, you get that out there, IL-2, those are, regardless of the true effectiveness, designed to be tank busting cannons, or at least vehicle busters. Let me at least leave it at that. I will feel less like I'm leading people on less if I say they're vehicle busters. Because let's also be honest, 37 millimeter cannons early on in the war might be effective, but by mid-war, pretty much useless against most vehicles unless it truly was a top attack, maybe a rear attack. But even then, you look at mid-war German tanks, and they wouldn't have been. It would just bounced off. A 37 or so millimeter just would not have destroyed the tank. So I think it's a interesting case to be made for being able to use these aircraft and use them for what they're good for, which is shooting up vehicles, maybe not for killing an armored target, So, but I think it's a good discussion.
Is there any relevance to the equipment cards? I never really had a chance to use those. Maybe that'll have a bigger play.
Well, so Ken brought that up. He said, "Hey, there's going to be a equipment card for gun packs out there, and hey, maybe you guys ought to wait and see how that plays out." And equipment cards I think it's a really useful way to simulate some of these bolt-on capabilities. But to me, when it's a built-in capability, maybe there's a better way to actually simulate that. And maybe the answer is just give them gun packs the whole time. So certain aircraft always get gun packs. But looking at some of the information that I've seen, really what it's going to do is it's just going to give you extra firepower dice. It's not going to remove other traits. So that gets back to the argument we've had about, do we roll the dice, or do you use the number of dice as your balance, or do you use a trait as the balance? And I know we had a really long discussion last Friday at the Pentagon about just that mechanic and the math hammer involved in taking dice and giving dice. And then it may not always even out. Add 2 dice for strafing ordnance, and then take away 1 or 2 dice for armored targets. Does it necessarily balance that out? Not unless you're shooting a specific kind of target. So it's kind of sometimes a little difficult to script, I think. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the ability of like hardened targets and armored targets to take dice away from the strafing attacks?
I feel like I just got to try it out and see. I would presume we've been given, what's written based on some actual table time. So, maybe these things have been, considered over the course of several games where that kind of stuff's been tried out and modified to come up with a a reasonable solution. So I think once we try it out, we'll have a better sense.
Right. And I think the thing people have to remember is that there are different traits for different reasons. Because armored is really geared against strafing, hardened is geared against bombing, and likewise, not every armored target is hardened, and not every target is armored. So some of them are both.
How about mobile? What effect is mobile going to have?
So let me throw ships out for a second, because that one always confuses people when I add mobile ships in there. But mobile also takes firepower dice away. Now it doubles the effect if you're a ship. We can talk about that. That's an argument about how hard was it to dive bomb a ship or to strafe a ship. But sorry, and mobile only affects bombing runs, not for strafing. But the real question to me about mobile is, we get in this really small number of die removing, and on these ground attacks, and if I'm wrong on this, please correct me for the strafing attack. But it's still firepower plus pilot skill. So even your worst pilot is getting 2 dice out there that he's adding to the firepower of his airplane. So baseline it'd be 3 dice. For your bottom pilot, you get a veteran pilot roll in with 4 dice. Now it's 6 dice. So you're only pulling one of them for a mobile target. Is that really affecting the odds? I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it's like critical hit, removing a dodge die.
Some of these targets have multiple factors like that, being mobile, armored. I'm thinking about things like armored trains and stuff. If I recall,
yeah,
they had multiple.
That's when it gets really cool. So now armored trains, which is ironic. So let's take a look at an armored train. This is one of those that's kind of funny in how all the targets work together. So woe be to the person who goes, I really want to fly against an armored train. Well, that probably falls under the previous aircraft or previous episode's discussion of kissing your sister, but I'll read you the stats anyway. So it only takes 2 area hits to destroy it, 3-point hits, but it is mobile 2 and armored 2. So let's step back and remember, I can't strafe something and kill it. If it's a ground target, I can strafe and sink ships, but I can't kill an armored train just with strafing. So I have to get 2 bomb hits on it. And it's mobile 2, armored 2, which means I'm going to automatically, from all my bombing attacks, suffer -2. And kind of an even worse penalty is if I'm trying to strafe this thing, which I don't know why I would at this point, but if I am, I'm also losing 2 strafing dice. So I think that one's going to be pretty difficult to work in. And maybe the reason you want to strafe it is because you want to take away the light flak dice before the rest of the bombers get there. I don't know. But I think that with an average pilot, it's already putting you down to your firepower. And most of the aircraft in the game average maybe 2 firepower. Some of them, even in a ground attack roll, have 1 firepower die, just because they had such a low volume of rounds. Low, if I can speak English, should have had so much beer tonight. They have such a low rounds per minute that armored train takes away both of your kind of attacks. I don't know. Can I torpedo it when it crosses a bridge?
Remind me what happens if you roll critical success on a strafing run. Does that just take away 2-point target, or
so
2-point hits?
If you're on a strafing run, and you get a critical success, it's 2-point hits instead of 1. So you still have no way to generate area hits.
Doesn't bump you up to an area hit,
right?
If you get
so
a critical hit.
So if you get a critical when you're bombing, you get an area and a point hit.
Okay, so that's where I was thinking that. Okay.
Yeah, so that's where it just gets a little bit strange. But once again, I think the only reason you would be strafing one of these trains is to get rid of the light flak, so by the time the bombers show up, these aircraft can get close to the target, employ the weapons, and not be just shot out of the sky by 3 light flak dice. But mobile 2 is a huge hit at that low skill level. Now, if you're shooting a truck convoy, it's mobile 1. I don't think pulling 1 die is that dramatic when the average number of dice is 3. But pulling 2 dice from an average 3 or average 4 die roll is a
bigger deal.
Impact. Yeah, exactly. Now, if you if you paid to have a whole bunch of ace ground attack guys, it's not going to matter because you're rolling like 7 dice per attack. So pulling 2 dice at that point, yeah, that's just not changing the odds.
And Rudell's going to have a bomb too, so.
Yeah. Well, and so the funny part is adding all the strafing ordnance in there makes things even more interesting. But where I will say it gets really interesting is as you start looking at some of the ships that are both armored and hardened. It's nice when you get up to the level of a battleship. Hey, he's armored 2, so strafing you're automatically losing 2 dice. He's mobile 1 and hardened 1, so you're now losing 3 dice bombing this guy because he gets 2 dice for his mobile and he gets a 3rd die for hardened. So sinking a battleship with bombs, you're already at a 3 die disadvantage. Definitely something you want to do a torpedo on, but that's all right. One more of the clarifications we want to talk about is revisions to the terminology or the trait of laden. And laden is now probably going to become kind of a negative trait rather than a description in the rules. There's really kind of a card devoted to it now. And just like some of these other positive aircraft traits, like agile is no longer just a regular aircraft trait. It's going to be treated as a positive. So started looking at some of the information we'd been given about laden, and I didn't really catch it when I first paged through. I wasn't really paying attention to the core aircraft mechanics that had changed. But laden now has an interesting loophole, shouldn't say loophole, interesting capability that is different than what we're used to and is very similar to how jet works. So when you go into the rules and when you look at how these multi-engine aircraft work and how the negative trait of laden works, sure, you still are at -1 pilot skill, -1 speed. But now the rule is may not climb for advantage if an enemy is within 18 inches.
Okay. So you don't lose that capability altogether.
Right. So it's now really, I'll say, number of engines agnostic. It's not geared for a 2 or 4 engine bomber. It's really geared to how it's going to have to be used with. You're carrying strafing ordnance on an F4U. You're carrying, you have single engine bombers that are out there that are still higher performance aircraft, like an A-36 might be out there, but still is laden. So now you either ditch your bombs if you need to climb for advantage, or if you are outside 18 inches. So I think what we'll see for at least some of the single engine laden aircraft or fighter aircraft that are laden, you'll see the game switch to a little bit of this, like Jet has this 9-inch hold down where you're going to always keep leaving aircraft within, in this case, 18 inches of the bombers. And the bombers escort is really going to be trying to push all those enemy fighters outside of 18 inches. So we'll see. We'll have to see how that plays out. I'm interested to try it.
It's definitely a setup for a much bigger games too. I mean, as I'm imagining these scenarios, once you throw in, your bomber stream and then your escorts, I mean, you could potentially have some pretty big games on your hands.
I think you could, and I think that's the good thing is as there's a discussion, we'll talk about here in a second based on some of the listener questions. Once again, stop drinking my beer and spend more time podcasting. As we talk about what the listeners wanted to hear, there's some changes and some amplifications to how the game runs that I think are kind of interesting. And so I'll jump right into one of them. They talk about game mat size out there, and they really still put out the same answer that for most of the things you're doing, 4x4 is right. Maybe 4x6 if you need to put more aircraft on one side or need more maneuvering. But as we look at the size of the scenarios, I mean, some of these are 12 aircraft scenarios that they kind of suggest out there. So I think that'll be interesting. I'm trying to remember. I think our largest was 8v8. Yeah, and we had plenty of room. I felt we had a 4x6, and we actually had a lot of excess room.
I think they're reluctant to tell people just go 4x6 because maybe not everybody is. Maybe that's a turnoff. Kind of like how a lot of games are D6 based because everybody's got a D6 in their house. You don't have to go get special dice for that.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe a 4x4 is just a little like less barrier to entry, maybe in the people's minds. I think
it may be.
I think go 4x6. Yes, just do that.
That's kind of my default answer is that you can do jets on 4x6. You can do 8v8, 12v12 aircraft on there, because really, when we say 4x6 table, people think they kind of break it down simply. They're like, oh well, that's just 50% more room. Well, to me, what it kind of is the ability to have separate fights that are evolving that everybody isn't involved in or isn't running up the board edge. And you've already heard me pontificate about the board edge and how you play to that. On a 4x6 table, you can have two separate propeller aircraft turning engagements, and people can't pitch from one to the other very quickly. I know when we played our 8v8, there were elements where it'd take you a turn or two to get over into the other fight to influence it. So I thought that was pretty useful for separating how the boards would play. But I think the answer is everybody go out there and buy yourself a 4x6 mat. If you can only play on a 4x4, that's awesome. Let it drape over the edges. Nobody's going to judge you. But if you can go out there and use the 4x4 or 4x6 mat on a 4x4 area, I think it'll work. Along with some of the other things we talked about with revisions to the laden rules, people have asked, how do you want to denote laden aircraft? There's always the easy answer of use that bomb-shaped center cutout. But more importantly, to some of the acrylic companies that are out there, they've started creating little bomb icons that you can put on your airplane. I haven't seen any that actually say laden yet, but I'm sure if we asked nicely for Litco or one of those other companies, they would generate that so that you'd have a way to denote the laden aircraft.
It's already so much like something they already have, right?
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I mean, like I said, I've seen bomb icons. I haven't seen a specific laden icon, but who knows? There's probably somebody out there who produces it, or if Just Lasered is listening in, then maybe they're going to decide that they want to do that for their acrylic tokens that they're offering. So I think we take a look at that.
Very dialed into the whole Blood Red Skies community. So yeah,
I think they are, and I know Ken's worked with them a lot to fill out his aircraft containers. So I think the guys at Just Lasered probably are really, really interested in helping out the Blood Red Skies community. Well, did you have any other things you wanted to talk about? Any other issues that we'd come up with? Other things you'd seen in passing in the Blood Red Skies Ready Room?
Well, we had talked in the past about some Flory model stuff, and you were asking me about some of the aircraft I just painted. Since I was doing that desert color on those 110s, I opted to use a different color Flory model wash. We'd used the black on a lot of the other models we had done. I used the dark dirt wash on
tell me how that dark dirt wash works, because I know you weren't exactly happy with some of the other colors, how they shook out.
Yeah, I think I used the dark dirt wash for the first time on my MiGs, and it just wasn't dark enough, so I went back to black on those. But it was perfect for the desert color on the 110s. I think black would have worked, but I think the dark dirt was just dark enough. So if I had to say, dark dirt's kind of like you could use it for so many different things, whether it's weathering or like panel lining, like we're doing. But the dark dirt is probably most appropriate for your lighter colors. If you've got darker colors, the black is where you want to go. I know the silver is not a darker color on the MiGs, but the black just looked better. Maybe because the dark dirt was just kind of grungy looking, and I was trying to get a clean, shiny appearance on those MiGs. So the black, is better for that.
But I think with the silvers, the black contrast really works well because it doesn't get lost in the silver skin. Because I know when I used some of the Vallejo Mecha staining stuff, and if I didn't use something that was really black, you'd step back from the model and you wouldn't see it. You might have a very brown or yellow highlight in there. It wasn't giving you what you needed. At least I thought.
That dark dirt's perfect for any of the desert schemes, any of your zeros that have that almond color. Pistachio color. So I was really happy with it. It's just so easy to use. Cool. We've talked about it in previous episodes, but that Flory model wash stuff is super fast and easy. It's a really good trick.
Where are you guys ordering that from?
High Altitude Hobbies. I think they're based out of Colorado. I think we have the link on the on our Facebook page for them from a previous episode, but
right.
we got the it's kind of nice. I've never
HighAltitudeHobbies.com. Easy to find, theoretically.
Yeah. I've only made small orders, a couple bottles of wash here, some sanding sticks there, but I get a handwritten little note on the business card from the owner saying, "Hey, thanks for ordering from us." And it's kind of cool.
Yeah. So if you go straight to High Altitude Hobbies, they've got a whole section for Flory Models products, everything from sanding sponges to sanding sticks to all the different washes. And so you should be able to find that. I still have been bad and haven't tried any of this. I will get to that. I'm just trying.
Let me tell you, I used their starter kit for I think they call it the starter or sampler set or something for their sanding sticks. It's just a little grab bag full of all different grits and sizes, because you can, I don't know, they have so much variety. And so you get kind of a little bit of everything in there. And I've already found my favorites. I don't know what it's called. I have to go back to the website and see what the particular one I like is called, but it's a certain color. It's this green color. It's really perfect for both the hard plastic, like the BF-110 models from Warlord Games.
Their weathering and polishing sticks that are the green ones. Those look pretty cool.
Yeah, I want to get more of the skinny ones because you can get them in all the right places. The ones I have are more I don't need to know what places you put these skinny sticks. That's a good out of context. But so I've already found my favorites just from working with those. And
that's funny. Like $13 for this starter set, and you get a bunch of different kinds. The wide ones, I have no idea what they're all called. The wider sticks, the skinnier sticks, and in all the different kinds, the blue, the black, the green, which all have different grit to them. So
I even used them on my metal models as I was prepping them, and they work great for that too. So I would recommend anybody, if you're interested in trying them, just get that starter set and see what you like. And then that's kind of why I did it. I was like, well, let me try these out and see what I like, because I didn't know what to purchase. They have so many different, until I got my hands on it, I didn't know what I was working with.
Well, so I can tell you, just looking at it, I know that I want some of the blue 220 grit ones, just because that's what I normally use on a lot of my Warhammer stuff. But I'm always trying to fit in the corner of a sanding sponge or something like that in there. And here, just having the stick is going to make it so much easier.
They're really nice.
Yeah, so I'll have to try some of those. I'm sure there'll be yet another way I can waste more money in this hobby addiction. And if you're not careful, black weathering wash sold out, and dark dirt is listed as sold out on the website. So if you haven't gotten them, you may have to wait. So maybe we'll need to send the owner an email and find out when they're going to get some new Flory wash in.
Our listeners in the UK probably get it much easier than we do, because I think that this High Altitude Hobby guys are the sole distributor in the US. I could be wrong.
I think they are. I haven't seen it anywhere else in the US. I've been trying to figure out where the heck I can get it. So, well, Brett, thanks for taking the time to chat with us. It's always good to catch up.
I can't wait till we get a chance to play some of this airstrike stuff. We've got to get you up here. And one thing I'm looking forward to is maybe in an upcoming episode soon, we'll start to talk a bit more about what we plan with this Malta campaign, now that we're getting closer to having scenarios to go along with it.
All right. Well, thanks for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll catch up across the gaming table instead of just talking on the podcast. But until then, I'd like to encourage our listeners to run out, spend some time commenting, spend some time on Blood Red Skies Ready Room, talking about what we know about Airstrike. Once again, realize things are set in stone. It probably has gone to press. But the pre-orders are out there, and if you're excited to go pick one up, go ahead and pre-order today from the few vendors that already have it. That way, you'll make sure you get your order in early, hopefully get it satisfied, and not be sitting around waiting for your package like I have on a couple occasions.